UFC Fight Night Andrade versus Blanchfield is this weekend, and I'm going to give you guys my full predictions of the entire card, top through bottom. I have to say, I think this card is some sort of sick, twisted joke from the UFC in between all the awesome pay-per-views we're getting, but it's okay. We're getting some really good pay-per-views. We'll make do, and if you're a bettor like I am, you know, a card's a card. So the first fight of the night is Clayton Carpenter versus Juancamilo Ronderos. Juan only has one fight in the UFC, and he lost to David Dobrak in the very first round. Juan has only 5 professional fights since starting his career in 2019, and they're all versus garbage men. And when you watch Clayton footage, you can just clearly see the difference between him and Juan. So I know that's a little short, but that's all I really needed to see to go with Clayton here. He's going to be my pick for the first fight of the night. The second fight of the night is AJ Fletcher versus Thema Gorimbo. My pick is going to be AJ Fletcher, and my reason is AJ, since winning his Contender Series bout, has lost 2 fights. He needs this fight or he'll probably be cut from the UFC, and he absolutely knows this. And his opponent, Thema, is an absolute can crusher. It's his first fight in the UFC. He looks like a good submission record, but his majority of his subs are all the way back in 2013. So I see a first round finish for AJ. He was going to come in very aggressive knowing he needs this fight, and he's going to start heavy and break Thema. I just really don't see this Thema guy coming in here in the UFC and cranking out a submission on AJ. And I do think that the debut lights will likely get to Thema, considering he's fought literally nobody of any significant skill ranking his entire career. So moving on up, Nazim Sadykhov versus Evan Felder. My pick for this one is going to be Nazim Sadykhov. Both are can crushers for the most part, who have each been tested once on the UFC stage. Nazim has a slight size advantage. He passed his Series test, whereas Evan lost his last fight. Both are very similar fighting styles. You know, this one's really hard for me to pick just because both have such similar records. Both really seem to be a very similar spot in their career. Both are very similar fighting styles. But I do see Nazim getting the finish in the second or third round via TKO stoppage. This is one of those ones where I'm really just going more so with my gut, with the slight size advantage, looking at their last few fights. I just see the way these guys match up. I see Nazim getting the edge of it, but I do think this will be a pretty good fight. The next fight on the card is Ovince Preux versus Philipe Lin. This is one of those ones that is just absolutely terrifying to make a pick on, just because you look at both of their records and they're just disgusting. But I mean, if you really take a closer look and look at who they've both fought. Like, Ovince Preux is literally challenged for the lightweight title against Jon Jones. He got his ass absolutely destroyed, but I mean, he did get there and earn that spot, right? Whereas Philipe Lin's, I mean, he hasn't really done anything significant in his career in the UFC thus far. To me, this fight just seems a lot more winnable for OSP rather than Philipe. Philipe has lost 2 out of 3 of his UFC fights, only ever beating Marcin Prachnio in his last bout. OSP doesn't really have a good record either, especially lately, but if you look at his opponents in his last 5, the skill is so much better than who Felipe's fighting. He's lost to Ben Rothwell, who is way bigger than him at heavyweight, Jamall Hill, who's the current lightweight champ, and Tanner Boser at heavyweight as well. He's won against Shogun, which in hindsight, I mean, didn't mean too much, but this was a few years ago. And Alonzo Minefield, who is what I'm actually putting the most stock in terms of his wins. Again, this was a few years ago, but Alonzo is no joke at all. The biggest thing I want to point out is at lightweight or anything but heavyweight, he's 2 wins for 3. And the only loss is to Jamall Hill, the current lightweight champion. So if you only look at that, he's not doing so bad, really, is he? No, but all jokes aside, I mean, an OSP pick is absolutely terrifying, but if you look at his record, I think he is due for the win. I think Philipe is just more of a bum than he is, and I do think Ovince Preux will edge this one out. And moving on up, we have Jamall Emmers versus Khusein Askhabov. My pick is Jamall Emmers, and originally I was going to go the Khusein side. I mean, you look at his record, and I believe he's 23 wins, 0 defeats, and Emmers has lost 2 out of his last 3. But then I started taking a deeper look at what's going on in this fight. This is Khusein's debut in the UFC, right? He's fought absolute bums his whole career, and I mean like literal garbage men his whole career. No disrespect to them, I'm sure they're great at their job, but they're not great at fighting. And he hasn't even felt it get hard or go into the later rounds since 2016. Emmers, on the other hand, his 2 losses were to Giga Chikadze and Pat Sabatini. Both of them are not bad fighters at all, and he actually took Giga the entire distance. So in my opinion, both are being tested by the UFC here. One of them is a prospect coming in who really hasn't had too much tough competition. And the other, who has had some tough competition, lost, but did decent. So I do think that Jamal will push him just farther than he's ever been pushed recently, and I do think he'll either break him in the second or third round, or he'll just win a 29-28 decision. Moving on up, we have Lina Lansberg versus Mayra Bueno Silva. My pick is Mayra Bueno Silva here. And this one's a lot easier to pick. Lansberg is 40. She's definitely on her way out. I think Mayra wins via sub and Lina gets cut after this fight. I don't really need to list any more than that. I haven't checked the odds at this point, but I guarantee Mayra is the absolute big favorite. Moving on up, we have Jim Miller versus Alexander Hernandez. This one was a tough one for me, just because Jim Miller is getting up there in age, and Alexander Hernandez has looked pretty good in a lot of the fights he's lost until the later rounds where he just gets outpaced and destroyed. But being a last-minute replacement and the way he loses his fights, I just see him coming out here heavy, trying to break Jim Miller, not being able to because Jim Miller's a tough son of a bitch. And then Jim Miller's likely going to finish him in the second or third round. I really did go back and forth on this one, but again, the last-minute replacement, him having issues with pace, him having issues lasting the entire distance, it really becomes a question, do you see Alexander Hernandez finishing Jim Miller in the first round? And I don't see that happening in this one. So yeah, I think Jim Miller is going to get this one done. Moving on up, we have William Knight versus Marcin Prachnio. This one again is a tough one. I mean, William Knight's awesome to watch him fight. He's just like a bulldozer in there and you never know when he's going to get the KO. But he's lost 3 out of 3 of his last fights. So, I mean, he is due for a win and he is my pick for this fight because of that. But it's a little bit scary riding on him lately. I just think both are going to go for it. Heavy focus, which favors Chaos Williams' style. It really is a hard fight to pick. I wouldn't bet on this that much, but if I had to, I would say Chaos Williams, William Knight gets this one done. Moving on up, we have Josh Parisian versus Jamall Pogues. I'm going to be picking Jamall Pogues on this one. Both are heavyweights, so really anything can happen, but I just think Jamall has age on his side. He just got to the UFC, and he should be a lot hungrier considering he just beat a contender in the Contender Series. This is his first official UFC fight. He is a little bit of a size disadvantage. However, in the heavyweight division, sometimes the size disadvantage can actually play into their favor. They could be so much faster, have better cardio. And I just see him being the faster striker in this fight and either winning by finish or decision. But again, heavyweights are always a little bit scary to pick, but I really do think Jamall gets this one done. Moving on up to the co-main event, we have Jordan Wright, the Beverly Hills Ninja versus Zach Puega. My pick is Zach Puega just because if you have not seen Jordan Wright fight previously, guys, he has literally the worst chin in the entire UFC. Like, he'll come out looking like a goddamn ninja, as his nickname, absolutely destroying the guy, and get tapped once on the chin and then just fall backwards and just faint. Like, it's actually insane. He's just one of those guys similar to like a Johnny Walker who every single time they get touched, you have to be worried about them dropping. Jordan's also lost 3 of his last fights, so he's going to be in a spot where he's really fighting for his career, which is going to either make him more risky, likely to get chinned and KO'd, or is going to make him fight a little differently, not exactly his style. Zach, on the other hand, is undefeated at middleweight. I know he lost his last fight, but that was at heavyweight, so I'm going to give him a pass on that, and he usually wins by decision. So you have the decision winner versus the loser by knockout, and I just think the decision winner's either going to knock out the loser, aka Jordan Wright, or he's going to just get the decision in this one because Jordan's going to play it too safe. Now, I could be wrong, and I could see Jordan come out and just do some crazy shit and catch him, and I would love to see that because Jordan's an exciting fighter to watch. But if I had to make a pick, it's just, you can't pick Jordan Wright. Like, you just shouldn't do it to yourself, you know what I mean? Watch it, hope for the best. It'd be cool to see him get on a couple wins. Let's see his chin maybe improve somehow, I don't know. But for now, man, I can't pick him, so I just can't. So we're going Zach Puega. In the last fight of the night, we have Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. I'm going to go Jessica Andrade in this one. I swear she literally just fought like 2 weeks ago, but I love it. She's back in here, and she's an absolute tank. It's a really hard fight to pick. Usually it's just easy for me to pick Jessica Andrade unless she's fighting like a Shevchenko. But Erin Blanchfield is no joke at all. Erin's got very dominant wrestling, which I know Jessica is a very good wrestler as well. I think Erin's better in the wrestling department. But I think Jessica will be good enough to nullify the takedowns just enough, and then will outstrike her and do more damage on the feet. So I see Jessica winning a decision or winning the type of fight where it's takedown attempt after takedown attempt, and eventually Erin just kind of gives up, tries striking, loses that way. But again, Erin is an absolute beast herself. I think she'll lose this fight, but she's going to come back and go on her own run. And I could definitely see her being champion one day. Like, she's 23 years old. She's younger than me, which blows my mind. And that's another thing that kind of goes against her in this fight, right? Like, Jessica has fought the absolute best of the best, whereas Erin has run through the division like a buzzsaw. Usually when you have those matchups, as long as the veteran is still good and still in their prime, they usually win. But who knows? I could be wrong. I do think Jessica takes this one home though. So that's the entire fight card here, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of my picks. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know. I'm going to have a more betting focused video come out on Friday with best parlays, best single bets, and more odds focused on the entire fight card. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys want to see some of that. And let's just get past this UFC card so we can get on to some of these awesome pay-per-views coming up.